We're about to hear Mihaela talk. She's a software developer and technology passionate. And, well, as much as I understand, she's the girl. Hi, we can see you. She's the girl who most of all likes to jump out of her comfort zone. And this is the main reason, according to her, for her success that she lives right now. Mihaela, please, I didn't want to sound like illiterate. How do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, this is a tough one. It's Ghidersa.
And that's why I didn't try. Because that was something. Okay. Mihaela will be talking about the many phases of architecture. And I want to remind you once again, live audience and the audience online, please write your questions down. We will have a few minutes after the session to ask what's most important in your mind. Okay, Mihaela, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here with you today. Well, being is a way of saying I'm glad that we can still meet. Maybe in the future we will meet in person. But for now, let me introduce myself a bit. My name is Mihaela Ghidersa. At my core, I'm an engineer, and I could say that I'm also an artist because I'm both interested in technology and public speaking. That's why I'm here today, trying to share some of my experiences, maybe some of the experience of others that I had to learn from. So yeah, I want to thank the organizers for having me. I feel honored to be part of such an amazing lineup of speakers. Right from the start, I have to say that in this particular occasion, I'm not here to turn your world upside down with some very complicated technical concepts or give you the perspective on the best architecture. Today, I'm from the point maybe or from the position where I think that this is sometimes a toxic trait that we have, thinking that it's always about the technical concepts, the never-ending processes that we have. We are so emotionally attached to the rules and the positioning levels. I would like today to stop for a second, of course, not exclude the technical part, but more like look a bit at the team and understand that, well, developers are real people and they need more than the task at hand to grow into being real professionals. And although on one side, technical stuff you can find anywhere, and mostly it's easier to integrate in our project. Well, when it comes to team dynamics, it's a bit harder to actually find the best solution because people are different. The rules of interaction are different. Their level of knowledge is so different. So we need to do maybe some knowledge sharing and some conversations also in that part. Beyond delivering a presentation, I'm here to contribute maybe to better teams and better products. And also, definitely, I want to learn from your experiences. So I'm eagerly waiting for the Q&A part where we can discuss more and maybe give me also your perspective. Well, when it comes to discussing what architecture is, of course, a lot of very smart people try to find the answers before us. So we are not the first ones that are asking this. And as I was searching and trying to find the best definition, of course, I did not find one that is extremely complete, but I found many interpretations. And unfortunately, many of them were sometimes confusing and hard to understand, to really use, let's say. Most of them seemed very abstract and a bit hard to understand, especially for developers that are in the beginning of their career. So if it's to take it very, very low level, let's just say that architecture is a base structure upon which we build step by step. We build one component after another, keeping in mind the relationships that they have between them, how they evolve in relationship to another components. And of course, all of this is realized by taking into consideration the whole picture of the product that we are working on, the technical constraints, if there are any, and also the context of the organizations that the organization that we are working with or for. So we can talk really about architecture without just touching a bit the subject of design, because in many cases, and I think that this is again because of the fact that we have this tendency of giving very abstract definitions, but in many cases, architecture is being confused with design. We have this tendency of sometimes overlapping them. As already discussed, the architecture is a structure, a blueprint that defines some very high-level components, some very high-level units, whatever you want to call them, in order to see exactly how our product will be shaped. Using the right or the wrong architectural pattern will later determine how we are going to comply with some quality attributes that we chose for our product. On the other hand, the system design shapes things more at code level, the way some very specific components interact, some modules, maybe some classes at some point, what they can or can't do. So all of this is possible by identifying the systems design. So in time, we can later decide what design patterns we should use in certain contexts in order to work smoothly and create better products. Ending a bit of discussion about design and architecture, I really liked how Creative Hawk, which I saw that is also a speaker today, he nicely talks about how architecture represents the significant design decision that shape a system where significance is measured by the cost of change. Significant decisions are architecture and the rest is design. And I wanted to make this observation because later on we will go a bit deeper in the decision-making process and we will discuss a bit more about it. Another nice definition, or maybe one that we can relate more, is given by Simon Brown, who said that architectural decisions are the ones that you cannot reverse, you cannot change in an afternoon. So they have a big impact, so we have to be very careful about how we are actually working with these decisions and what are the areas that they are going to impact. So think about this the next time when you have to make a change in your design or architecture, see exactly how much it would take when it comes to cost, to resources, and so on. And precisely because we can't change an architectural decision in an afternoon, maybe the first step when we start shaping a structure like this is define what is significant and why is it significant. And I think that understanding this sort of matters really makes a difference for our development team. What kind of matters am I referring to? Well, we can discuss concepts like the technologies chosen to work with, or maybe the high-level structure, or actually understanding how we are going to tackle some risks in the future. Why exactly is impacting our team? Well, let's think about a team. It's easy to think, sometimes as developers, in our ego, that if we just write very nice code, we are very smart, and follow some very well-tested approaches, apply some best practices that we've learned, we don't need to know about architecture in order to actually do our task. Well, I'm gonna come from the other side and say that there are actually some very important benefits of knowing the way the main components of my system are interacting. What resources will be needed if at some point I have to take a decision that has to do with the structure that these components have or how they interact with each other. So having an overview on the architectural dynamics helps answering questions like the ones that we have stated. Also, these sort of questions are very useful in the process of predicting the change. So again, we come into this part of decisions and change. So we are getting closer and closer to exactly how we can make the best choices. And in this part exactly, I would like to say that, Darwin's theory that says that the species that survives the longest is not the one that is the strongest, but the one that adapts better to change. Well, I really think that if Darwin would have been a software developer or working with us in a technical context, he would have stated that the system that survives the longest is not the one that has the best technical approach, that is the strongest, but more like the one that can predict change and adapt change better. So for a long time, we had to deal with this idea, as we were saying, that, if we do our task, if we know how to tackle our task, as a development team, we should just put our attention in the coding part. Don't bother with the architectural matters, and just everything will be nice. And it's not. It will not be nice at all, because it's such a wrong way of looking at things. There are so many benefits, as we already discussed, that from looking at our product from above. And I will give my perspective. I was in there also just working with my task, no cares about the architectural structure or the decisions or what is happening in there. And for a while, this worked very nicely. At some point, I started working on a feature that was very complex, and actually, the plan for that feature wasn't that good from the beginning, so they had to change it after that. But as working to that feature, I realized that I did not understood where exactly everything had to fit, what exactly I was supposed to do in order to create a very good product and do my task in the end, because as a developer, right, that was my objective. So that was exactly the moment where I felt so frustrated, and I was like, okay, I don't understand what is happening in here, and I want more details. So let's just see who can give me more information. And that's how I started asking the technical lead, asking the architect, searching for the architect and trying to get the most from him, because he was not very close to the team either. And step by step, I started understanding what is happening in there. I started understanding what is the big concept. And in the end, I actually, instead of complaining about maybe the not so good decisions that were being taken at processes in architecture, I started coming with solutions. I started coming with suggestions to how we can improve some parts. I started being more trying to, let's say, to be more active and then reactive, proactive than reactive, because I started liking what I was doing more. Everything started making sense. So yeah, it was such an amazing change of perspective for me, and that was the way I actually started being so interested in this part. By doing this sort of mindset switch, I was also able to give up on some of the myths that I just accepted along the way, that I did not know they were myths. I just accepted that this is the way things are being done. And some of them are like, software architecture will never change. Very funny myth. We will destroy this later. Then the architecture is only an architect's problem. Well, we'll see that is not. And actually, experience, I'm sure, for many of you showed that an architecture is so much more than just an architect's business. And then the architecture is not about coding. Really? Is it? Is it really not about coding? Well, I'm sure that at least one of this, it was also part of your career. And let's go step by step and see how, by discussing and going more into detail, we can destroy this myth. And how could we just break myths and discuss architecture without discussing the key role, the architect? We can't really. And although it's a role that is not that easy to define, and I have to say from the beginning that it depends a lot how this role is being shaped by the context in which our architect is working, the organization context, the products context, the methodologies that are being used. What I strongly believe, and this is something that I'm not willing to give up, no matter what is the methodology that we are working with or the context, what I strongly believe is that there is a strong need for evolution, working towards creating the expertise and the experience that later will help us be able to face some challenges, because this role faces a lot of challenges, and also, make some very informed decisions. So we have to work towards creating competences to do this. Let's see. For a long time, there was this idea that, okay, the architect is someone that at some point it was a developer, but in time he evolved, so he just passed to this title, and he's not working with the development team anymore because he has some very important things to discuss about and think about. And yeah, the team should just do their part and the architect should do his part. And I have to be honest that again, in here I had the occasion maybe to work with two different kinds of architects. So in my early years of development, I've been working with an architect or at an application that had an architect that I never met. So yeah, you can imagine that I worked for that project for about 1.5 years or something like this. So I don't know, not even in this day, who the architect was. When I changed the product that I was working on, and I just had the architect just next to me, and he was so involved with the team and so open to discuss all sorts of matters that appeared in the development process, and he was so interested in how exactly his decisions are impacting us. And when he saw that we were not really able to implement because we were not, some requirements were not clear, he came and explained his vision to us in order to be able to implement. And that is exactly when I just concluded, okay, this is the difference between an architect as a title and an architect as a role. Then there was this idea that the architect has to be the god of the tech stack. And I'm just thinking, how can someone know every detail of the technology stack, especially when we are discussing about how rapidly the technology stack is evolving these days? This is an amazing pressure on a single person. It's not possible. More realistically, is to actually use the technical expertise of the team while raising the team. Maybe take part in the development process. There are a lot of ways that we can do that without investing too much time or doing direct coding, although it's not excluded. So the sooner you are involved with the team and the sooner you have this kind of input from the team, feedback from how your vision and how your decisions are actually being implemented in real life by real developers and in the code base that we already have, the sooner you can ensure that you are actually creating a realistic product that is going to evolve, that is possible for it to evolve in very real scenarios. Then we had this idea that the architect is the one that defines in the beginning the architecture, and then just takes care that it's respected because it's not changing. His role is just to make sure that everything stays as it was decided. And I'm thinking, do we need architecture police? Is this really the case? Is this architectural part so fixed that we have to guard it? It's like architecture police. How about understanding the system? And, combining it with the collaboration that we were discussing before and the feedback from the team and from the stakeholders, create more grounded in reality decisions and a system basically that is understood by the team and also can naturally evolve in time. So definitely the architect, it's a role that can be taken at some point by any member of the team, even for an idea, just by giving that technical perspective that we were discussing. The architect is someone that understands the technical part, has the expertise to make some decisions, and also raising the team while it's using the expertise of the team. And last but not least, it's someone that understands the system and also keeps in touch with the developer's perspective and knowledge. So yeah, it seems like someone that is taking care of a lot of details. And in the following minutes, I would like us to take a look at two sides of this role. One is related to the leadership, and the other one is the technical part. About the technical part, as I was saying in the beginning, we discuss a lot. We automatically, when we think about the architect, automatically we think about technical knowledge. But I would like to also touch the soft part, which is basically the leadership and how the team can interact with the architect. So it's important to understand that there is a significant difference between management and leadership. Management is a bit more strict. It's about some tasks. It's about some very specific steps at some point, while leadership is more about people, how you work with people, how you inspire them, how you help them evolve in time. As an architect, from my perspective, you should be a leader. That leader that has the overview and that helps the team to grow. Also very important is to understand, and this is where the leadership role shines, is that you in the team at some point, you will have different team members with different levels of experience, with different levels of engagement. So it's important to actually make sure that everyone sees your vision and give them your vision and make sure that they understand your vision exactly how you imagined it. So we don't usually talk about the soft side of being an architect, but in the real world, an architect's role is both worrying about the technical stuff, but also about leading, giving the team a direction, collaborate and coach them where needed. We are basically talking about the leadership role where soft skills are extremely important. Then we come to the knowledge part. And if you ask me, I really think that an architect should have a development background, because if you don't understand what is happening in the code base, you might fail to make a decision. But this is exactly where the misunderstanding is happening, because everyone thinks, as we discussed before, okay, he has to be the best, he has to know everything, he has to have all the answers. Well, no, I really think that maybe a better approach or a better attribute is to automatically change from high-level concepts to the low level in order to be able to get that feedback that we're discussing, understand what is happening at the development of the product, and also be able to make sure that everyone is understanding what he is trying to build. So for this to be happening, we need to actually just create a trustful and full of collaboration environment where people can express their ideas and expertise and come to you in the moment that they are having some suggestions or maybe some obstacles that they have to get over. And this is exactly where the idea that at any point, we are discussing before, at any point a developer can, for an idea, for a feature maybe, take a bit the role of an architect is happening, and goes very well with this part. So being an architect is challenging and takes a lot of knowledge and experience. And at the same time, you don't need to be an expert in a particular area to become one. It is better to have a broad understanding of software development and be able to communicate your knowledge effectively, while, of course, being backed up by best practices. And we were talking about that decisional part and how actually being able to to predict and adapt to change so important. Well, making decisions concerning architectural aspects is a very sensitive subject, because, as we were discussing, they can be changed that rapidly, and they have a huge impact. And there are some best practices in this area. One is to try to get as many details as you can and push the moment of the decision as much as you can. And I think it's important to understand that the more you push, because, you know, it's better to just have a bit of delay and be sure that you have all the details. You gather the feedback and the requirements from all the stakeholders. You got the best of what can happen in the future. Yeah, the best idea of what might happen can happen at some point in the future, in order to predict how exactly the product would evolve. So you can see if actually you can take a decision that it's more informed. On the other part, we can't just push the moment of the decision, indefinitely. So we might as well try to think in terms of evolvable structures, to be prepared for what might be happening. Think about some of the risks that might appear. Think about what are the attributes that will help your structure to actually be maintainable in the future, extend in the future, and also take into consideration a total change of perspective from the stakeholders, because the market can change, the competition is so big, and the direction of the product can change very high speed. Then we have the technology stack that is evolving so much. So yeah, we try to integrate maybe better tools that will help us build a better product or improve some aspects of our product. So it's also always good to be able to change and evolve. So I would like to point out that, of course, becoming a software architect is not something that you become all of a sudden. It's a role with responsibilities. It's a role with a lot of decisions to make. And even though sometimes it's hard to define it directly, it should have all the ingredients that will build the confidence and the expertise to be ready and worthy of it, from my perspective. So, can really every developer be an architect? Well, the way I see it, things are like this. Of course, at some point, any developer can contribute to the architecture, can actually take this role maybe for a feature if he wants to try maybe someone that is has a senior level, so he wants to test his abilities and see if he's ready for the role. But of course, developers can become architects, but they have to grow into becoming an architect. And we have to understand two aspects. Having an overview and some time-to-time engagement with the system architecture does not make you an architect. And the fact that you have an architect does not make you responsibility-free of how the system, will evolve, or the quality of what you're building. So it's important to take into account also this aspect and try to build your way into becoming an architect if you want to do this. If you just want to grow professionally, actually the steps are pretty much the same. Find someone that can give you some guidance, look at people that are doing the role that you want to do, and try to learn from their experiences. And maybe why not ask them to mentor you, to help you build a path that you can follow in order to grow from a developer to an architect led. Then, are developers really just coding and architects just taking care of the architecture? Well, making coding part of your role as an architect, it's a total game changer. And we discussed about the benefits of the feedback, the collaboration, the fact that we can use expertise from the team. And I had this kind of example for a fact where, again, we had an architect. For this team, we knew who was the architect, but we are not ever interacting with him. It was a distributed team with a lot of distributed product with a lot of teams, and no one was really taking care of the integration of everything in one piece when we were delivering. So teams were not really being aware of what other teams were building. And of course, we try to get closer with the architect and try to maybe take some of his responsibilities. But what I've seen when we started doing this and trying to understand what is happening and actually try to collaborate with the other team, so trying to take that role into the team, you realize the fact that we changed our attitude. We understood why some issues appeared and again came with solutions and trying to just try to change the perspective, try to see exactly with whom we need to talk in order to make certain changes. So this was a game changer in the team, and I'm so proud of the way the team handled the task. So as an architect, you understand better the components, the code base from a developer's perspective, because you get that reality feedback. But it's also important to know how to integrate that feedback in your day-to-day work. And when you come back to making decision at the structure, to know exactly how to use that feedback. And there are ways of keeping in touch. You don't have to exactly code, but you can also participate in code. If you don't have time for this, maybe you can collaborate, as we are discussing, maybe work with some senior developers that can give you a perspective on what is happening and ask for their opinion from time to time. Maybe at some point when you have a new feature, be the owner for that feature and keep close to the team, or let someone that is senior, maybe, or that is capable actually, because this part of positioning levels, it's relative, but someone that you see in the team that is capable of doing the job or wants to grow into having this role, give them the ownership and see exactly how they are working and collaborate with them, coach that person. Do some pair programming if you have time, some code reviews. You can add some quality gates in order to keep track of the quality of the product, or actually create some unit tests for your architecture in order to be able to see exactly if the architecture was understood, if you don't have dependencies on some places that you shouldn't have them. Or at least if they are introduced in the code base, you can identify them quicker and resolve them. And also go to the root of the problem and see exactly where you have to give more details. So from what we've discussed, maybe with some exceptions, architecture is part of a development process. Of course, later, the architecture is what we are implementing. Yeah, we are developing in the team. Architecture is not about forgetting implementation details, but more like keeping a balanced collaboration process, taking feedback, coaching the team and collaborating with the team. And I think that you become a good architect when you're able to slightly move from details to high-level concepts. So I really believe in the amazing benefit that we have from every software team considering a software architecture. I had this experience, I seen the benefits, so I definitely encourage you to try also this approach. What I've seen is that failing to do this leads to a lot of inconsistencies, integration issues, especially when we are talking about more teams. We fail to actually work with some to take care of some quality attributes and be sure that everything is evolving in a healthy way. And last but not least, the team accumulates a lot of frustration because they don't know what to do. They feel lost and they are just building something, but nothing is really clear. So both for developers, step up your comfort zone if you want to work or have more clear what you're working on. Don't be afraid to ask. I've never been refused when I ask for help. So at least in this context of technical concepts. So just ask for help, ask for guidance, ask for resources that you can look at and try to build knowledge step by step. For the architects, you're close to the team, be a leader and use your expertise to raise the team and together to create amazing products. Build strong, quality-oriented products and don't forget to have as much fun as you can. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much for this presentation. We have all the thank yous in the chat. We have all the thank yous in the audience. But we don't have any questions yet online. They usually come up after the presentation, so maybe we will see some. Anybody in the audience, do you have a question? For example, about the architecture or the hair products that she uses, because your hair looks amazing. Let's see, we have somebody in the audience. I saw a few hands, right? Or only you? You only raised one hand. Okay, I must be taking something. Let me come. Here you go.
First of all, thank you very much for the talk. It resonates very well with what I am, from a very different perspective, from a perspective of a manager dealing with, but still I am also trying to define with my, let's say, new architect, the role of the architect, and you helped me big time. Thank you. In addition to that, I have a question regarding the architecture. So you mentioned at the very beginning of the talk that the architecture and the software should be, let's say, easy to change, so to say. So it should be not trying to reject change, but embrace change if needed. This immediately raises a question in my head somehow that we should engineer for the future, writing some additional stuff in our software that we are potentially not going to be using fully from the very beginning. And this violates the Yagni principle and the preliminary optimization principle and so on. What's your take on this? How to not to surpass this thin line between premature optimization and still building the software that is easy to change afterwards?
First of all, I got to say that I'm so happy that in a while I have the opportunity to hear someone actually asking the question verbally and not written. So I'm so happy to to somehow be in the conference, almost be in the conference present. And returning to your question, indeed, we tend to do this overthinking, also in our development process. And of course, when we are discussing about being open to change in the future, we're not discussing about, okay, thinking at the most crazy scenarios, because this is very hard to specifically point at some scenarios that might appear, because we don't know. As I was saying, we don't know how the market will evolve. We don't know how the competition will change. So the business requirements might change a lot. I had the opportunity of having a product that had to change its direction because the competition was so big. So we shouldn't think in terms of let's see exactly what is going to happen with this product in 2 years, but more like, I have these requirements right now. This is the vision that the stakeholders have, by gathering that feedback that I was discussing. So I'm going to start with this, but this structure that I'm starting with should be open to actually be extended later, to be modified. Of course, there is no this perfect structure that says, okay, if you're using this specific structure, you won't have technical debt later, you won't have additional costs or risks or things like this. No, but try to do it think about as extendable as it can be. What exactly can happen? Because you can have a certain level of overview on the product in the beginning, and try to think in terms of evolvable structure. And I know that there are a lot of maybe more into detail resources that you can go over to see, I don't know, in very specific scenarios, like the context of the product that you are working on. There is this concept of evolvable architecture. So you can go more into that to see exactly maybe some scenarios. But my take on this is definitely work with what you have, gather as much as you can, feedback and perspective from all the stakeholders, and see with what you have at this point, what you can build that can actually be extendable, and it's not fixed. It's not something that when you are going to add a new feature or change something in the flow, that everything will break. Try to make it as extendable as possible. So this is what I understand by being open to change. And I think that this goes very well with actually do not overthink it. Like try to keep it simple with what you have, and see how you can work with it later. Make your life easier, your future self, for your future self.
I think the last sentence will also go well with another question we have from the online audience. Do you have any resources that you can foster a developer's mindset towards growing as an architect? Books, URLs, papers, anything?
Yes, actually, I can share maybe after the conference. I don't know if we have a shared space or something. Some of the resources that also help me and that I'm still going back to trying to learn. So yes, definitely there is a lot of documentation on this part. As I was saying, thank God we are so blessed to have a lot of technical resources.
That will be managed, I think. Yeah. I think that's going to happen. You're not the first speaker to ask for a chance to share with the audience. So I already talked with Neringa, the organizer, and I think we will be able to share anything our audience wants, and you can share later after the event. Also, together with that, I want to share the information that a lot of people asked, will all these sessions will be on YouTube? They will, but after quite a few months, because you didn't buy a ticket. Okay, any more questions from the audience? Not really. This is the third time I'm almost breaking this table. This is not good. I will stand here. Okay, if we don't have questions from the audience, I encourage you to have a little break and go to the expo zone where I'll be heading to. And well, thank you very much for the session, Mihaela, and we will be looking forward to meeting you live next year in the Bullstiff. Really.
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure. And
thank you very much.
You can approach me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and we can discuss more on the matter if
and share the files.
If it's the case. Yes.
Okay, a round of applause, please.